Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
The darkness fades into new beginnings as we lift our eyes to the hope beyond. All creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome, and for every fear there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. empty filled, the wounded healed, the broken back together, the poor are blessed, the weary rest. We will dance forever. The blinded see, the chained are free, the doubtful now believer, the outcast known, the orphan home. You are my Redeemer. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. Return, the voiceless heard, the mourner now rejoicing, the mountains shake, the world awake, creation all composing, the sad untrue, the earth renewed, the song has found its singer, the darkness light, the dead alive. You are my Redeemer. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. You are 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 making all things new. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new.
Good morning, Crosspointe. I have a couple of announcements for you this morning. On Saturday, February 14th at 5:30 p.m. in the Crosspointe Community Room, Crosspointe's very own teacher in residence, Jeff Chu, will guide us through writings and conversations around lament, praise, comfort, and joy. And in addition, we'll eat together potluck style. You can find more information and register at crosspointe.org/events. One of our goals in family ministry is to connect you to a wider community with other parents. And we know that it can be difficult to get to know other Crosspointe parents beyond the quick hellos at check-in or pickup on a Sunday morning. So with that in mind, we're doing something a little different for our next parenting lab. On February 22nd, right after the morning service, we will host a parent speed dating event in the community room. Using a format similar to traditional speed dating, you'll have short conversations with a variety of other parents around family challenges, parenting wins, and shared experiences. This is going to be a fast, fun way to meet people, discuss the realities of parenting, learn some parenting nuggets, and form community with parents of all ages and stages. Childcare will be offered for kids ages 1 year old through 5th grade, and those kids are going to participate in interactive Sunday Fun Day type activities with some of their Sunday morning Kids Point leaders. Registration is required so that we can prepare, and you can learn more about that at crosspoint.org/events. If you want to partner with Crosspointe financially on all the many great things that are going on in our community, there are lots of ways that you can do that. You can find out more information at crosspoint.org/contribute or text crosspointenc to 77977. Thanks so much for being here with us this morning.
There's a moment toward the end of the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus is going to be arrested and executed soon, and so he's been teaching in parables, answering some gotcha questions really well. It's clear that there are some men who are out of ideas on how to trap Jesus in his own words publicly so that they can end his movement. And so it's right in this space, in the 23rd chapter of Matthew, where he goes all out in front of a crowd against them. And the them here are the scribes and Pharisees. So before I read what he says, I want to clarify who these people are. This is an oversimplification, but scribes in Jesus' day, these are the legal and religious experts. They served as like lawyers and professional copyists of God's laws. They're the ones that know best what God's law says, doesn't say, what it means, can't mean. Everybody trusted them to make and apply rules for society. So these guys know better than anybody what the Bible can mean. It just wouldn't occur to a regular person back then to disagree. Pharisees, which their name means separatists, they're also widely considered to be experts in God's law. They're respected as the ones who most accurately teach and live a holy life in an unholy world. There were more extreme groups than them by far, like the Essenes. They moved outside of society. They were more separatists than anybody, didn't interact with anybody but their own, super strict. Pharisees were those who lived among the people and had a reputation for knowing best how to live and teach, the written and oral tradition of their faith within real life. And as an aside, the Sadducees are a different group, but we won't talk about today. That's more of an elitist group. They come from priestly privilege. They were the sort of belonged to the ruling class and had more of a literal interpretation of the Bible than the Pharisees. The Pharisees were more the common people's expert, very well respected then and now. And importantly, that's where the rabbinical or rabbi tradition comes from. So as we think about Rabbi Jesus, we have to understand his deep connection to the Pharisaical tradition himself. So I'll say more about Pharisees in a moment, but with this context, I want to read this very famous and intense moment in Matthew 23. It says, Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it. Just don't do as they do, because they don't practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on the shoulders of other people, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move it. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries, this little box they would wear on their head to symbolize having God's word on your mind. They make their little phylacteries broad and the fringes of their prayer shawls long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogues, to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, to have people calling them rabbi." So I want us to appreciate at this point how shocked everybody is that Jesus is calling these respected, revered men out, because he's saying, without like the insulating protection of parables or metaphor, this is a group of men who say things and perform things and get praised for things, and they themselves are not those things. They demand with others, often with severity and shame, what they don't demand from themselves. It's a show. And so he goes on, "But woe to you," or "sorrow upon you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." And the Greek word translated hypocrites here is hypokrites. And I've read some scholarship that suggests this might be the first time in literary history where somebody uses this word this way, because hypokrites, those were stage actors in Greek plays. And the way we use hypocrite now seems to start with Jesus using the word that way. "Woe, sorrow to you, scribes and Pharisees, you actors. You lock people out of the kingdom of heaven, for you do not even go in yourselves, and when others are going in, you stop them. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you pretenders, for you cross sea and land to make a single convert, and you make the new convert twice as much a child of the cursed valley of Hinnom as yourselves. Sorrow upon you, scribes and Pharisees, you pretenders, you actors, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected weightier matters of the law, like justice and mercy and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. So this idea of straining out non-kosher gnats from your soup and you're still swallowing non-kosher camels, this would have brought a laugh. Nervous laughter, but a laugh. It's just like his quip about you're worried about the sawdust in somebody else's eye and you've got a log in yours. It's intentionally funny rhetoric. And as a bonus, in his own Aramaic language, gnat is galma and camel is gamla. So you strain out the galma but still eat the gamla is some great wordplay. It's almost like there's a rap battle happening at this point that gets lost on us in English. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they're still full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate where the stuff is, so that the outside might also become clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you actors. You're like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside look beautiful, but on the inside are full of dead people, bones, the dead, and all kinds of rot or uncleanness. So you also on the outside look righteous to others, but inside you're full of acting, lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous, and you say, if we had lived back then in the days of our ancestors, we wouldn't have taken part with them in the shedding of the blood of God's prophets. And then Jesus goes on from here. He slams them for this because people very often pretend like the prophetic voice is something they honor in real time. Just like so many people selectively quote Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King nowadays, as if they would have agreed with him entirely, forgetting that King and his message was extremely difficult for us white folks, especially to internalize and adapt to. King was generally despised at the end of his life when somebody murdered him. So Jesus calls out the same disconnect in the scribes and Pharisees. They're pretending as though they would have not done what their ancestors had done to the prophets. Just like we forget King had, according to a Gallup poll, over a 60% disapproval rating on both his message and his methods. And Jesus is sort of calling out the same thing. You would have missed the Spirit then, just like you're missing it now. And then calls them collectively a nest of venomous snakes and worse. And then he closes out the section with Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which means city of peace, city of peace. It's actually the city that kills prophets and stones those God sends to it. How often I have desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you weren't willing. You're so insistent on pretending your preferred world into existence that you won't even let love herself protect her children, protect those who need to be protected from you. And he says, see, your house is left desolate to you, left to you desolate. Like, I'll just let you run the whole thing into the ground then. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. It's like you won't see me again until you welcome me back only to crucify me. So these are incredibly difficult words said in front of very powerful men. Two very powerful men in front of a crowd. Jesus calling them fakes and actors and self-righteous frauds. And then says, sure, you check some boxes. You give a tenth of your herb garden, like your farmers making a big faithful sacrifice, giving 10% of your crops. But what you're doing is pretending because you're ignoring the stuff that matters. Justice, or you could say social justice, mercy, faith. Do you recognize this? Jesus is coming after the people who come after people in God's name. Jesus is coming after the people who come after people for not living the right way and are ruining society. Jesus can be understood as saying, well, sure, you get by on appearance or on technicality or in your ability to appeal to tradition or even your ability to win a debate, but you don't produce the life that you're talking about. You're not influencing things to become more and better and more beautiful than they are. And I want us to be reminded here that this is what it means to take the Lord's name in vain. That commandment of the 10 commandments, it's not about, you're not allowed to say, oh my God, or GD, or whatever. That has nothing to do with it. It's when you say, thus saith the Lord, when the Lord hath not said. It's saying that this is what you have to do, and your own life contradicts the very thing you're imposing on other people. That is to miscarry, to carry emptily, to make a vanity the very name and reputation of God. Do you see how timeless this trait is that Jesus is calling out? How many of us today, we know people who wake up and read their Bible, listen to a Bible podcast, they pray every day and have Bible verses in their, they put on Facebook, their Bible verses, and they've got Jesus in their bio. But these are the kind of people often who, they'll ostracize their own children for coming to a different conclusion than they did. How many influential religious leaders shame others about their personal lives, their sexuality, their finances? They build entire empires on Bible verses and prohibition. But their own lives aren't just sometimes, but painfully frequently, almost commonly, eventually discovered to be marked by dishonesty and fraud and greed, the very sexuality they condemned in other people, untrustworthy, abusive character that they warned others about having. And this isn't just faith leaders, it's politicians, it's all kinds of people. And Jesus is calling out the scribes and Pharisees, not for being scribes and Pharisees, but for their hypocrisy. They're lying. And this point is important on several fronts. And we've said this before. Using the term Pharisee as a blanket way of describing somebody that's self-righteous or rigid or being hypocritical, that's a slur. That's not me being overcautious. These are the feelings of many, many Jewish people expressed over the years. That Christians have countless times made Jewish people and their traditions and their customs and what they honor out to be bad or deficient, needing to be fixed and completed by Christian understanding. That is so arrogant and really hurtful. Pharisee, using it that way, that's a slur. Because Pharisees were honorable and their legacy is very well respected to this day. So using that whole tradition as an insult is insulting, and it's very misguided. Their role in the New Testament story is not to be villains in the story of the good guy. The issue wasn't about them being Pharisees, because again, Jesus was maybe kind of a Pharisee himself. It was specifically about somebody having influence and then being a hypocrite. It was about hypocrisy at work in the lives of influential people. And so even outside the Bible and outside the words of Jesus, you can find that false Pharisees were denounced by the Jews of antiquity. A false Pharisee is somebody that was self-righteous and pompous and performative, caused all kinds of problems for other people. They were hypocrites. The problem is hypocrisy and self-delusion at others' expense. And so this is important to understand not only for the sake of reducing even accidental anti-Semitic Christian rhetoric from our vocabularies, which is plenty of reason, but it's also important so that we might learn something. Because if this is a depiction of real events and real people, not just cartoonish villains and then the good guy, then there's something to look at in ourselves past the labels, like why it happens. Think of the hypocrites that have affected you. Why do the hypocrites in your life do that? They present a persona, a certain cluster of ideas or values, but their own lives don't reach that standard that they impose. And sometimes that can just make you roll your eyes, but it very often causes harm. What is that mechanism? Are they simply the villains in the story of you, the good guy? Of course not. What else is happening that's worth observing and learning from outside of, oh, that's just a Pharisee? Let's move in a little closer. Why do you do it? Hypocrisy. I'm not going to ask why I do it. This is my sermon. But why do we do it? Well, it's not just because that we have something we're hoping to be and then what we end up doing. It's got to be more than what we're going for and what we end up doing are different, because that arrangement is inevitable. There's always going to be a gap between what we intend or aspire to or value and then what we actually do. And it feels crummy when that gap is really wide, and it feels better as it gets narrower, and the very rare chance that those two things touch, what we intend and what we pull off, match. That feels great. So hear me on this. The scribes and Pharisees aren't being called out by Jesus for their aspirations and their actions not matching, because that's everybody. Just like we don't call out politicians or faith leaders or teachers or whoever for making a mistake or falling short of their intentions. we call them out for pretending it didn't happen, while imposing their values on other people, for pretending there's no gap in their life, but they fixate on the gaps of other people's lives. That's what they get called out for hiding the parts of them that discount their influence, for their accepting genuine praise for disingenuous behavior, for using shame and control for other people, but they turned a blind and indifferent eye on their own behavior. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They can be politicians, they can be pastors, they can be parents. But what they could have done, these scribes and Pharisees, without changing anything else about their life, just changing the pious presentation, without changing anything else, they could have just changed the presentation, and in doing that, they would be in lockstep in partnership with Christ himself. Because the deeper truth here, the real life-giving, pressure-relieving reality of all this, is not that Jesus is saying they're not perfect, they're still sinners. It's not that. It's that every single day, every single one of us has at least a little gap between our say and our do. At least a little bit of daylight between our best intentions and our real life impact. And the thing you and I can do with this is not, well, I just give up. And it's not to quit trying. Neither is it, well, I'm going to lie and make other people focus on their problems so no one notices mine and so I can feel superior. Neither of those. We can simply be the ones who name that gap. We just work on that. Because this honesty does way more for human development and connection and peace for human beings under the banner of love than hypocrisy, what could ever do. So as a tangent, do you want to know who I think is often the best at this? Is stand-up comedians. They're way better at it than pastors and priests. We'll see a comedian say, have you ever noticed, or do you ever, and then they'll name a particular thing that we do, all of us do, and it's incredibly embarrassing. And we laugh because it's funny, but it's also because we can't believe they just said that into a microphone. It's a gift to have somebody else name that gap that we thought we had to leave hidden, or that would be the end of us. These gaps, we know that they exist. They're always going to be there, but we actually get some control over how the gap gets categorized, and it really comes down to two different labels: hypocrisy or humility. And they're not just labels, they're two totally different categories, because one's about breaking the human experience with deceit, and one's about creating space for actual human connection and reality. But it's the same gap. It's just two different worlds, hypocrisy or humility. The way of humility is not an entitlement to grace, by the way. We don't continue to fail and then just say, well, you have to give me grace because at least I'm trying and nobody's perfect, Everybody has a gap to manage. That's demanding work from other people that I'm not willing to do. And some of us really do want it both ways. We want credit for admitting that nobody's perfect and that we have flaws, but we like to keep it general. But at the same time, we're not working on ourselves as much as focusing on what other people should improve on. And they should also improve on giving me grace. This isn't humility. This isn't grace. This is just manipulation. And it can be manipulation dressed up in Jesus' words too. If we criticize or demand or judge or condemn or speak down to or preach based on principles and convictions we have from the Bible, or our sense of ethics or morals or common sense or our definition of good, but our own lives can be observed to breach these very principles, that mismatch, even a child can say that's hypocrisy. But if we have these same principles and convictions, whether from the Bible or our sense of ethics or morals, common sense, good, whatever, principles and convictions that we think are worth aspiring to. I want to pursue that for the improvement of me and my world. But I'm the one who observes, but I have a lot of work to do in this area or these areas. I don't have this stuff mastered or figured out. In fact, I know less now than I knew last year. So I would never hold over others stuff I'm still working on. It's the same gap, but now it's what we call humility. And that humility is an invitation to join me to join you. It's an invitation hypocrisy can't offer, because the closer we get to hypocrites, the more we can see that it's not real. So see, again, it's not about being Pharisees. It wasn't about lacking perfection. It's about living the gift of grace for yourself or others, living in a world where you can enjoy the honesty and the safety of honesty. That's why that's important for us to understand, not just in the name of a Bible study where we properly understand what Pharisees are, but understanding one of the big problems we're experiencing in our culture with politicians, Christians with a platform, among others. It's this. It's generally true that a hypocrite is somebody who doesn't understand compassion. Because we only have to pretend when our level of consciousness is unable to accept reality, who we really are. And a lot of us have a great reason for getting stuck there. We grew up in painfully critical environments. Many of us were condemned and shamed for being anything other than what we were told God could tolerate. Some of us still believe that you avoid hell by being elite and better than other sinners and all kinds of stuff. We've been pretending since our earliest days in church, let alone everywhere else. So it's never been safe to just name and accept how inconsistent and all your shortcomings and how specifically stupid we can each be. It's never been safe to admit, I don't meet my own standards. But no matter how good the reason we were behaving this way is, my point remains, a hypocrite, generally speaking, is somebody that just doesn't understand compassion for themselves. And so then, like the most basic math equation, can't have compassion for others. If they need to pretend, everybody else has to as well. So hypocrisy isn't just annoying. It perpetuates a society where there's just no compassion, no room for understanding or acceptance. You cannot accept reality or people as they are. It instead reinforces that everything must be this nervous, fake, lonely, disconnected stage play. And so what would society look like when people have to pretend superiority over others because they can't accept the silly mess that they are? What you would have is a land full of grown adults who are better at believing and seeing and behaving only that which is based on a constructed identity. Not what's real, but what needs to be real. The amount of things that they just cannot see or admit is just breaking society. You get a land full of grown adults who have lives marked by not just double standards and hypocrisy then, they become skilled at ignoring conflicting data to preserve an image, an act. They would make life hell for people with different skin than them, if necessary, to keep up and to protect the team, their identity. They would believe the worst possible propaganda about other people, vulnerable other people, just not to lose an election, because that would mean losing power, superiority. They would burn the world down before they'd simply say, wait. This isn't me. This isn't true. I'm not being honest about this. I need to take some time to reflect. They'd rather burn it all down than do that. That's why Jesus calls them out, not for being Pharisees, but people who could make a difference with their influence in their part of the world with humility and grace, but instead are putting their energy into ignoring themselves and damning everybody else with a standard that they themselves can't pass. That's why he calls them venomous snakes and murderers, because they're dangerous. So this is an invitation to take a moment and think about how we might do our own work here, because as ever, hard as this stuff is, the invitation and the fruit of all this work is really good. And so it's getting comfortable with the discomfort of humility. This might be a good place to take notes, because I want to give us some questions we can ask each other as life is happening. Right when we start behaving as though the gap between who we think we're supposed to be and who we really are, it starts feeling dangerous to admit to ourselves, let alone let others see. Have questions for that moment that keep us in the way of humility, not perfection. Humility, because that increases the sense of safety and kindness toward ourselves. And that's all grace is trying to give us, is peace. So here's a tough question to answer until you get used to it. Hey, wait a minute. Am I performing a role right now in order to be seen as smart, smarter, dominant, more experienced, more brave? Am I performing a role right now? Am I willing to, with kindness toward myself, shift this into maybe even saying out loud, actually, wait a minute, I don't know. Actually, hang on, let me rephrase that, because I think I'm being a little overconfident. Am I willing to step out of this role in real time in order to let my true self learn, hey, it's safe. You can stop acting. You can be a mess sometimes. That's going to be better for you and others. Here's another very helpful question as you learn to get out of your head, because that's where all the deception and pretending happens, and into your body, or what the Bible would refer to as your soul, because there's no such thing as a soul without a body. When I feel the persona turn on, which is really hard to notice because some of us think our persona is us, where I have to know the most, where I feel like I can judge that, where it's like this sense of superiority. Where do I feel that in my body? Where is my nervous system maybe flagging a sense of threat? Because if I'm performing, that's about hiding. So I have that grab in my stomach, or am I tightness of my chest? Am I feeling like if I don't present the best, most dominant self right now, that it's going to cost me something? Can I relax so I can start teaching myself, you don't have to perform for love if you're going to grow in the way of grace? Where's that happening, and how can I relax it? Here's one that sounds like it's about disrespecting yourself, but it's actually deeply respecting yourself because you're refusing to pretend. Ask yourself, maybe even during an argument, can I, with kindness and respect to myself, not take myself so seriously? What would it look like to let go of having other people take me so seriously? Could I, in the middle of something, just smile and go, wow, I'm really taking myself seriously here for a second. Hang on. Here's one that sets an intention to deliberately increase the way of grace in a day, to just ask, how can I demonstrate to myself and others a couple times today that it's safe and preferable to be honest, to be kind about the inevitable inconsistency, to be unsurprised, unthreatened about how messy and wobbly and moody I and everybody is going to be at one point. That the person can be this way today and this way tomorrow based on they missed 2 hours of sleep and had a weird dinner. How can I demonstrate that it's of the highest sincerity to remain curious and aware with no shame, no self-deprecating, that, like David Dark puts it, to love a person is to love a process. We're never done. How can I continue to find ways today to improve and accept myself far more than put energy into polishing an act? Here's one more. Ask yourself, when you notice that you're speaking of what others should do or not do, ask yourself, do I have things in that same area that people could say all this right back to me? Like, notice and take special note of, do I judge other people on what they do, but I want to be judged on what I was trying to do? Please judge me on my intent while I judge other people on the behavior. Notice that. Notice that double standard of which side of the gap gets the attention and the judgment, depending on who's asking. And then just ask if your should, or any sense of judgment, or any sense of reducing things to something overly simple, would that work if it was aimed back at you? So that's a humility question. And when you ask that, it'll leave you a little quieter and a little more kind, because kindness is the natural side effect of just being willing to understand. So you can come up with your own questions, like meditations like this. Take all the shame and failure language out and see if you can make it where hypocrisy has less place to happen, because you're getting more and more used to just naming that gap, more attuned and accepting of what you are rather than what you're allegedly required to be. Because that decrease in pretending is an increase in compassion and love and connection for you and for everybody. So to close, we'll give psychologist Carl Jung, the last word today, because he once said, unfortunately, there can be no doubt that humans are, on the whole, less good than they imagine themselves or want to be. Everybody carries a shadow, and the less it's embodied, acknowledged in the individual's conscious life, the darker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it because they're naming it. But if it's repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. My friends, may we, in our participation of the way of love, dare to not merely try to become more, but only to become what we are. And may we be people who love and allow others to do the very same. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspoint.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspoint.org/care. And welcome home.